Hello, I'm Tulia Urshitz. I am a math and science teacher in a lower secondary school near Verona, Italy. I use robotics, coding, and tinkering inside my teaching. And today I want to show you that in our experience, it is possible to increase girls' interest in STEM at school using this kind of tools. In my presentation, we will speak about gender stereotypes in STEM. We will show some initiatives to contrast gender inequalities in STEM and try to demonstrate how educational robotics can help to reduce the gender gap in STEM education, giving some examples from my teaching activities in my classes. I will try also to give some tips and to share with you some useful resources to take some inspiration. Just to tell about my work, as I told you, I teach math and science in a lower secondary school with students from 11 to 14. But I also have some lessons in the entire curriculum from the kindergarten to the high school. The experience I had showed me that we can have very good results in girls' interest in STEM with good marks when using some learning mediators inside our lesson. Usually, we always use stereotypes because stereotypes are useful to learn about the reality. But when stereotypes are inside school lessons, inside the STEM, they can be a barrier to have a success in girls' love for STEM subjects. And it is very important to demonstrate girls that there are not real differences between male and females in the success they can have in STEM. For STEM, I want to remind that we mean science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Starting from a market when we try to buy something, we can see that stereotypes are more common than what we think, because also when we look at the surprises in Easter eggs, we see that they present differences between girls and males, as to say that girls love just dolls, or they love just something related with dresses, with fashion, and the males are more attracted from games, from engineering. But it's not real, because there are a lot of girls who love to do the same things that boys do, and at the same time many little boys love playing games with dolls, or some role games in which they are like daddy, or like example of like what they see their mom do at home. Research, anyway, has shown that science learning is something that is really gender role stereotype domain. In fact, the perception that boys and girls have about their abilities to become engineers or to succeed in scientific careers can be influenced from what they see at school and of course at home. The stereotypes influence the behaviors and the self-perception, and many times we see that this kind of perception can reinforce some other stereotypes that influence the choices that students have in their future careers. Of course, and many of us as teachers experience that is more a cultural fact. This situation. In fact, for example, when I have some parents coming to school to ask about their child, if I tell that their child has some problem in mathematics, some learning difficulties, if it is related with a boy, parents try to find a way to fix these difficulties, giving some extra lessons or trying to push their boy to study more or to have more efforts in maths. But if I tell the same to a girl parent, sometimes it happens with moms especially, that they say that also for them math was difficult when they were at school, so they feel like the difficulties are something more related with a girl's difficulty than a real lack of efforts or of study and so on. So we need also to try to put more efforts when at school, because in the society these stereotypes are really very common. I think that many of us, even if we speak about fighting stereotypes, are victims of prejudices. Things like saying that boys will become engineers and girls are more adapted to study humanities, or that men have a career, women just have a job, are really very common. And if we hear about these stories since we are younger, it becomes more easy thinking that this is the truth. There is a nice tool developed from the TWIST project that can show us that many of us are victims of prejudices. I invite you to take the tool at the link that you see in the slide to find if you too have this perception and are victim of these prejudices and these stereotypes. In Europe, but not only Europe, there are many initiatives that try to fight against the gender inequalities in STEM, considering that the interest of girls in STEM is very high when they are in the first years of schooling, but it decreases while they become older, and while they think to be not adapt to this to study STEM subjects later on. The European Commission give funds to a project which started also a campaign that was called Science is a Girl Thing. In the link that you see in the slide, you can see a little video clip that was recorded for this campaign. The video was really criticized with all the teachers, many teachers that saw it, and from many scientists, women, men, because the criticism is about thinking that girls are more interested to fashion, to makeup, and to attract more girls in STEM is not necessary to follow the fashion or to be really like a pin-up. The Science is a Girl Thing project was a great project. Now is ended, and there is a new project that takes the things from that the Science is a Girl Thing project and develop more toolkit for teachers. But both of them, Science is a Girl Thing and Hypatia project, give a lot of tools, a lot of ideas, a lot of useful tips to teachers to try to have some lessons more oriented to engage girls' interest in STEM. In Science the Girl Thing, there were a lot of role models which gave some ideas to girls of what a woman can do in the STEM fields. And also they tried to show that there are many work related with STEM that can attract the interest of girls, of women. In the Hypatia project, the follow-up of the previous experiences developed also a toolkit. You will find the link in one of the last slides. A toolkit with some resources that can be used in the classroom. Of course, nothing is. There are not very difficult things that every teacher have to find to increase the girls' interest. But what is more important is to find more constructivist approaches, more practical things, because this is the way in which girls are eager to go on and to study STEM subjects. A few years ago, in my classes, I tried to ask to girls if they found themselves some differences between males and females in their interest in math and science. So we made our research in our lessons. It was a way to speak about statistics and about collecting data. So girls in the class developed their own questionnaire. They spread that to all the girls in the school, and they collected the data, analyzing them. What appeared as results is that girls and boys feel the same, at least during the junior secondary school, feel the same towards STEM subjects. There are not real differences, and what girls like more is that there is a kind of not really competition, but there is a kind of mutual help between boys and girls in their success in STEM. So girls love everything that is creative. They love art. They love something useful. They love they love to do real things, to look at the real world and try to understand how things work. And these things are also things that are loved from males. So what is important is to try to have practical lessons in the class, to look to have some inspiration from the real world, and to make students more comfortable with experimenting what they are learning. So to grow competencies through real tasks. We introduced the use of education robotics because we found that robots, we intend robotics kits, are really very useful because they can be considered like learning mediators, and students generally consider robots like games, like toys, because it's something that is linked with what they do with the Lego, for instance, in their afternoon at home. And girls find easy to be involved in practical activities because what they feel more is that if they do something wrong when working with robotics, it's not about feeling like a bad evaluation if something goes wrong or if the robot is not able to succeed the task, but they just find a way to fix the problem and to start again from the problem. So an error, a mistake, is just a starting point to do better. And in this way, the girls are not, they don't feel the fear of insuccesses. To use robotics in the classes and to increase the interest of girls in STEM through robotics, we as a teacher need to try to put the links between the real world and the mathematics, science, technology, engineering. When we also add coding or tinkering in robotics, we give some tools that give instruments, give tools to students and to girls especially to find a solution, to divide the problem in little parts, to develop the critical thinking. They generally have a task like a problem, and they start from the problem and try to solve it. So the methodologies that are linked with the use of robotics are methodologies linked with the problem posing, with the problem solving, with the cooperative learning, with the many competencies that grow together, like those that are the key competencies. So the students learn how to learn. They develop the ability to share their ideas, so to express their mother tongue. They, of course, have some basic skills. They develop basic competencies and skills, digital competencies. They increase the creativity, because the way in which they work is completely different from traditional lessons, because it's not the teacher who gives all the contents, but is something that comes from discovering the solution to problems. What is very nice is also that working with robots grow the inclusion in the classes, because students can reprocess the concepts that they learned in abstract, and they are able to connect with the reality. For example, if it doesn't matter which kind of a robotics kit we use, because what is important is that the teacher that becomes like a learning facilitator have to find the way to involve all the students in solving the problem. So, for example, in this slide, you can see that we were working with measures. And on the left side of the slide, you can see a Bebot. And I asked the students to find the circumference of the wheel. Of course, it is an indirect measure, because it's not possible to go inside the robot to measure it. And through that, we can ask students to find their own answer, and also their own questions. They discovered that also the instrument is important. So in the two pictures in this slide, students discovered that if they are not precise and they make a mistake, the mistake will become bigger if the measure, the distance that the robot will run is bigger. So we could speak about measuring, but also about errors in measuring. We found that every solution is important and can add something to the contents that students learn in a class. When working with robots, I forgot to tell you, we divide the students in groups, from pairs to groups of 3 or 4 people. Generally, it's better to have mixed groups, because boys and girls have different approaches with robots. If we make, at the really beginning, it's better to have groups of girls separated from group of males, just because usually boys are more used with technological tools, because they have a lot of toys of this kind at home, and they try to bring the leadership of the group. But after a while, we needed to have mixed groups because even if boys are more try to give the first solution, girls are those who are more passionate. They try to go deeper in solving the problem, and they can give a big help to the group. We can start working with the robots since the kindergarten or the primary school, and we can use robots to modelize some problems or to build some prototypes. Of course, the building phase is the first one generally. Not in the case of the robots that you are seeing, because these are some robots more useful in the first grades. But when you go from the third, fourth grade, you can ask students to build their own robot, or at least to personalize their own robot. Or you can work with tinkering, asking them to recycle some materials to build a model, and then make it moving and acting as a prototype. After a building phase of the robot, we will ask students to find their own code, and the programming language that we use generally are really easy for them. They are block programming. We can start since the kindergarten. In this case, for example, you can see the Scratch Junior software that can be used on tablet, also from very young students that are not able to read. We can start from some unplugged activities, and then ask students to find the code that is able to move some characters from one place to another. Most of the software that we use, at least in the first grades of school, from the primary to the lower secondary school, are based on Scratch or on block programming, and they can use some robots, like in this picture, some virtual robots linked with the real robots that will try to perform and to give a confirm that they build the right code. There are some robots that are thought for the kindergarten, like in this example. Here is a cubetto that doesn't need a computer, but just a wooden board in which every shape that you put on the path give a cubetto an order that will move it forward, backward, forward, left, right. Not really backward, because it has not the backward shape. And you can also speak about routines, cycles, loops, but you can use also in upper grades. In this example, for instance, we were speaking about equations in the lower secondary school, asking students to find which was the unknown element. Through this way of working, it's more easy to reach all the multiple intelligences in a class. So many students that in normal lessons are not good will achieve better tasks and will try to give their own solution to a problem. And the girls don't find any difficulty in answering. They don't feel fear of having some mistake. What is anyway strange to observe that we need to have the same expectation from boys and girls in the class, and sometimes it's strange to observe that even the most experienced teacher is not aware that we are not always taking care of this when we plan lessons. Sometimes it happens also that girls have some failures, like in this case in the picture you can see a robot that is not built in a perfect way, but this is just because girls have less experiences in work with bricks and with Lego, because they are not part of the toys that usually they receive from parents. Anyway, books and lessons are really often oriented to males. They are written from males for males. And like if we think about physics, we always speak or often speak about some cars, the speed of cars, or things that are not really very interesting for girls. Girls love to know that something is useful, is interesting. We can attract girls when we ask to design new things, or when we ask to solve the world problems. So we need to consider and take account of gender also when we have lessons. In this case, for instance, we through the ability of Lego robots to follow a black line, we can give just it as engineering practice, technological practice, or we can add more interest, asking, for instance, a girl to think to the bees dance that they do when they look for food in the real world. So we ask students to program a robot that is able to reproduce the bees dance. In this way, we see that it's more easy to attract girls' interest also in robotics and this STEM in general. Of course, if when we work in team, we ask students to work in team, it's easier for everyone, boys and girls, to share with the others their ideas and to share the work. And this way of working is able to reduce the gender bias. Of course, what is important is not to use robots just to work in the same way that we have in classical lessons. So we don't need to explain everything, but we need to give some tasks, some problems to students to solve, and starting with a constructivist approach. So learning comes from the experience they have during they grow during the task that they are trying to solve. In this picture, for instance, we were speaking about the angles of polygons, and we saw that using robots we were able to reach all the students in the class. During last summer and during last year, we in my school we had some funds, like in other schools in Italy. We had some funds from the government from the Peer Opportunity Department, and we tried to involve more girls in STEM, giving them those things that they love. In this picture, you can see that some girls are designing some key rings using 3D modeling, and starting also with the plasticine. For younger girls, it was very useful to understand how to work with 3D modeling. We use simple programs like Tinkercad or SugarCAD. We also asked girls to design their own rings, and then after the model, we went to the 3D printer. And the 3D printer have some similar principles that are shared with robotics. That is the think, make, improve, process. So students are not able to see the results of their thinking unless they have finished the work, so unless the object is printed. And sometimes they find that even if they thought that all the process was right, the result is not good. But what is important is not only the result for us as a teacher to grow the interest and also grow the skills, but is the process. So the process is more important than the product. Lego robots are very common in classes and schools all around Europe, and they are very, very good because they can be helpful to understand many mathematical and technological concepts. We don't have to ask students to only to follow some tutorials, but we need to try them to develop the creativity because it's something that is usually missing in the lessons, and girls love it really, really very much. In this example, for instance, I asked the students to find a model to represent the binomial cube. And as boys and girls are different, every student in the class tried to find a different way of solving the problem. So starting from some cardboard boxes to Minecraft, or using wooden shapes, 3D shapes. But what is important is to give freedom to develop creativity. So if I can give some tips, thinking to the lessons that I found more successful with my students, I would say that we need to avoid the use of stereotypes. Also, don't think that all girls love fashion or some makeup or some girls activities, and boys just sport or some fighting games, because both of them can do all the things. We needed to have some role models, but in the class, to some role models from the scientific network, the scientific society. But also, if we don't have the chance to bring some scientists or some engineers at school, it would be at least a good starting point that the teacher himself or herself try to share the enthusiasm for what he or her is doing, to engage more students, more girls in doing STEM activities. Then we have to encourage teamwork because it's why during teamwork that there are less gender distinctions because a group task involves all the components of the group in doing something. We need to adapt the lesson to different cognitive styles and so to reach all the potentialities in a class. And what I think, at least in my experience, very, very important is to connect STEM subjects to everyday life. Of course, if we bring also good examples to follow, like giving some role models or women or girls that succeeded in STEM, we can give an inspiration, further inspiration. And if you are asking yourself how to start with working with taking account with gender differences in the class, and have some resources that can be useful to start to work with robotics in the class, robotics, coding, tinkering. You can take a look to the links that you see here in the slide. And if you have more question, feel free to email me and I will be happy to share what I'm doing with my students. Thank you very much.